So welcome to all of you in the next lecture in the series of lecture which we are giving on economic survey. So today will be the lecture number 4, where we will talk about the monetary policy which was undertaken by RBI during the whole of the pandemic period and since then. So in the last lecture, in the chapter 3, we have discussed about the fiscal policy which has been undertaken by the government, and in the current lecture, we are going to discuss about the monetary policy which has been taken by the RBI. So till now, we have discussed that to fight any kind of economic slowdown, to fight any kind of macroeconomic instability, there are two policies. One is the fiscal policy which is undertaken by the government, and the second is the monetary policy which is undertaken by the RBI. And both of these policies, coordinated action, leads to macroeconomic stability. That is, you can ensure growth, you can control the inflation, right? So in this lecture, we are going to basically understand what kind of monetary policy, which was undertaken by the RBI to arrest the slowdown because of the pandemic, and since then, right? So first of all, monetary policy. So in the last class, we have already discussed that RBI has a monetary policy committee. RBI has a monetary policy committee whose target is to control the inflation, between 2 to 6%, right? So this is the topmost priority of the RBI Monetary Policy Committee, that it has to control the inflation between 2 to 6%. And once this target is achieved, then RBI Monetary Policy Committee starts to focus on its second priority, that is to ensure growth. So these are the two major priorities of the RBI Monetary Policy Committee. The first most important priority is to control the inflation, and then once the inflation is between this particular limit, then the Monetary Policy Committee starts to focus on its second priority, that is to ensure growth. Now, during this pandemic, right, in the pandemic, the economy contracted, right? There was economic slowdown, all the economic activities were put to a complete halt. So during that time, the inflation was between this particular limit. So inflation was not a problem during the COVID period. The problem was with the economic slowdown. Hence, the RBI started to prioritize growth. But you know, we have discussed already that during the last year, from January 2022, since January 2022, the inflation has been, the CPI combined inflation has been more than 6%. So from the time of pandemic till this period, January 2022, when the inflation was between the tolerance limit, RBI was focusing on the growth. But during the last year, when the inflation exceeded this tolerance limit, so RBI has put all its focus on how to control the inflation, bring down the inflation within 6%. So this is how the monetary policy of the RBI changes, right? So in this chapter, we are going to basically discuss all these things in bit of detail. So before starting with the chapter, let's also do a quick revision of some basic concepts. Right? So we have discussed that RBI Monetary Policy Committee's target is to control the inflation from 2 to 6%, and then focus on growth, right? So what are the tools of Monetary Policy Committee? What are the tools of Monetary Policy Committee? So here comes the repo rate. So in every monetary policy committee meeting, the repo rate or the policy rate is decided, because this is the only rate which is decided by the monetary policy committee. Now, what is repo rate? Basically, for example, this is RBI and this is the bank, and these are the consumers or the public. So public take loans from bank and banks give loan to the public. Public do not directly deal with the RBI, right? So for just imagine, if the banks do not have money, the banks do not have money to lend to the public. So in that case, the banks will borrow the money from RBI. Banks will borrow the money from RBI, right? Banks will borrow the money from RBI, right? And in return, so for example, suppose banks need 1,000 rupees, right? So what will banks do? Banks will sell their securities. Banks will sell their securities, for example, the government bond paper, right? Which banks might have. So banks will sell those government bonds of 1,000 rupees and take 1,000 rupees from the RBI, right? And after a particular period, this transaction will reverse. Now the RBI will return back the securities and banks will return back them the 1,000 rupees. Okay. So if the banks do not have money on a daily basis, then banks can go and take the loan from RBI. For this, it has to sell its securities, the G-Secs, to the RBI, and in return, it will be getting the hard cash. And after a particular period, generally it is done on an overnight basis. So the next day, this transaction will again be reversed. So the banks will be getting their securities which they have sold, and in return, they have to pay back the 1,000 rupees back to the RBI from which it has taken the money. And for this transaction, RBI charges a commission. RBI charges a interest, right? Because RBI is providing the bank with the money for its immediate requirement. So for this purpose, RBI charges an interest. That interest is known as repo rate. That interest is known as repo rate, right? So this is how the repo rate functions. That's why इसका नाम भी है repurchase agreement, repurchase operations or repurchase agreement, because this transaction is happening on a reverse basis. Now, if the RBI thinks that the inflation is under control, the inflation is, for example, 4%. The inflation is, for example, 4%. So in this case, the RBI thinks that let us try to ensure growth. So for growth, you need more and more money with the public, more and more money with the businessmen, so that they can invest more, consumers can demand more. So in that case, the RBI decreases its repo rate. In that case, the RBI starts to decrease its repo rate to ensure more and more growth happens, right? Because in that case, the banks will be able to take more money from RBI at a cheaper rate, and hence banks will be giving that money to the public on a cheaper rate. So in that case, more and more demand for loans will be created, which will incentivize the growth. But now imagine if the inflation is greater than 6%, inflation is greater than 6%, so in that case, the RBI will increase its repo rate. The RBI will increase its repo rate, right? So this is first, repo rate operations. The second thing is reverse repo rate. So reverse repo rate is the second tool of the monetary policy. So the first tool of monetary policy is, so tools of monetary policy is basically what monetary policy committee can do to control the inflation or to ensure growth. So the first tool with monetary policy committee is to influence the repo rate. It can decrease or it can increase depending upon what kind of objectives it want to fulfill. The second comes is the reverse repo rate. This is a second tool of monetary policy. Second tool of monetary policy. Now, what is reverse repo rate? So now imagine if this is RBI and this is bank. Now, in this case, banks do not need money from RBI. Rather, banks have extra money. Banks have surplus money. So in that case, the banks can deposit its money to RBI. For example, let us take rupees 1,000. Because banks do not need that money. So what banks will do? Banks will deposit that 1,000 rupees to the RBI and in return, RBI will sell the securities. Okay. So RBI might have some government securities. So it will sell that government securities to bank in return to getting 1,000 rupees. And then after a day or on a longer period, this again transaction will be reversed. So the RBI will give back the 1,000 rupees to bank and banks will return back the securities. So these are basically collaterals. Because if you want to go to the bank and you want to take a loan, so you have to deposit some collateral. So this is what securities acts as a collateral. So if the RBI wants to take money from the bank, then RBI needs to give some collateral in return of getting the money, right? So this is how the reverse repo operation takes place, right? So in this case, the banks charges some interest. Right? Banks charges some interest, okay, which RBI has to pay, because in this case RBI is taking the money from bank. So in that case, the RBI will have to pay some interest to the bank. Now imagine if the inflation is greater, if the inflation is less than 6%. Let us take the case 1. If the inflation is less than 6%, then in that case, the RBI Monetary Policy Committee is very happy because the inflation is within the tolerance limit. So now the RBI Monetary Policy Committee will focus on ensuring growth. So for growth, it wants banks to lend more and more money to the public. RBI will not want the banks to deposit money to the RBI. Rather, RBI will want banks to lend more and more money to the public. So what is the need of you depositing 1,000 rupees to me? Why don't you lend the 1,000 rupees to the public? So in that case, the RBI will say that if you deposit money to me, I will give you a very low interest rate. That will not incentivize you to deposit money with me. So in that case, the RBI will reduce the reverse repo rate. Because RBI does not want the banks to deposit money with them. Rather, RBI wants that banks should lend more and more money to the public. In that case, the RBI will reduce the reverse repo rate so that banks are not incentivized to deposit money with RBI. So this is the case 1. Now, if the inflation is greater than 6%, if the inflation is greater than 6%, so in that case, what RBI Monetary Policy Committee will want? It will want that now banks should not lend money to the public. Rather, banks should deposit more and more money to the RBI. So hence, in that case, the RBI Monetary Policy Committee will rate the reverse repo rate. because it does not want banks to give more and more money to the public. Hence, RBI will say that, boss, I am giving you more interest. Why are you going and giving the money to the public? I am there to pay you more interest. So in that case, the banks will deposit the money with RBI rather than depositing it to the public. Now, this repo rate and reverse repo rate is basically linked by a formula. So repo rate minus 0.65% is equal to reverse repo rate. ठीक है. So the RBI Monetary Policy Committee only announces the repo rate. It does not announce the reverse repo rate because reverse repo rate is directly linked to the formula. So RBI Monetary Policy Committee announces the repo rate, automatically the reverse repo rate will come out to be minus 0.65%. In that case, you will get the reverse repo rate. So this is the second tool of Monetary Policy Committee. There are many other tools like marginal standing facility, right? Market sterilization bonds, right? Bank rate, right? Currency swaps. So there are many tools, okay, to influence the liquidity in the market. So there are many tools of Monetary Policy Committee. We have understood only the two basic tools in the current class, that what is repo rate, what is reverse repo rate, and what is the basic logic behind it. So only one thing which you have to understand again and again is that when do we need to reduce the repo rate, when do we need to increase the reverse repo rate, and second, that these transactions happens on a reversal basis, right? So 1,000 rupees you're giving to RBI and in return you're getting the collateral, that is the securities. And then after a day, tomorrow, this transaction will be reversed, or it can happen also for a longer time. For example, this transaction will be reversed after 30 days, 1 year. That will depend upon how the RBI wants to conduct it, right? So these are the two basic tools, repo rate and reverse repo rate. Why I have taught this thing? Because now we will discuss about a new tool of Monetary Policy Committee, which has been discussed in the economic survey. एक नया tool Monetary Policy Committee के द्वारा लाया गया है, which the survey has discussed about, and that is known as standing deposit facility. That is known as standing deposit facility. So this is a new tool which the Monetary Policy Committee has brought during this period, right? So अभी हुआ क्या देखो, ठीक है? So Monetary Policy Committee का target क्या है? Inflation and then growth. So what happened during this period since January 2022, when the inflation has been very high? Inflation has been well above 6%, right? So since the whole year, the inflation has been above the tolerance limit. So in that case, the RBI wants to suck more and more money from the bank, right? RBI wants to suck more and more money out of the bank because RBI does not want that public should have money, because you want to cut down the supply of money to the public because you want to control the inflation. So in that case, the RBI wants to suck more and more money out of the banking system. So for that, what it will do? It will increase the reverse repo rate. It will increase the repo rate, right? It will increase the repo rate. That means it will be costlier for banks now to take the loan from RBI. And reverse repo rate को increase करने से क्या होगा? It will be more incentivized. It will be more favorable for the bank to deposit its money with the RBI rather than lending that money to the public, right? So reverse repo rate will be increased and repo rate will be increased. But now there's a one problem. But now there's one problem. If the RBI wants to take money from the bank, suppose RBI wants to take 10,000 rupees from the bank under the reverse repo rate operations. Banks want to deposit 10,000 rupees to the RBI because RBI is there to give a very good interest rate. RBI is giving very good interest rate. RBI is giving 6% of interest rate, for example. So banks will be much more incentivized to deposit their money with RBI. But for that, RBI will have to sell securities worth of 10,000, because in the reverse repo rate, you have to deposit a collateral. So RBI will have to give a collateral worth of 10,000 to the bank and then suck out 10,000 from the bank. But this time, because the inflation was above 6%, because huge money was pumped into the economy during the pandemic, because government has expanded its fiscal policy. Globally, many investors brought their money into the India. So there was huge money supply into the public. And that's why the RBI wanted to suck a huge quantum of money from the bank, but it did not have the required securities. For example, RBI wanted to suck 1 lakh rupee from the bank, but it only has a security worth rupees 10,000. It does not have securities. So how it can take out that 1 lakh? So this was the problem which RBI was facing. It did not have the required collateral. It did not have the required securities, which is required to take the money out of the bank. So in that case, a new tool was brought that is known as standing deposit facility, in which the RBI can take the money from the bank on an overnight basis or for a longer tenure, but it does not need to deposit any kind of collateral. It does not need to deposit any kind of collateral. So by this, the RBI Monetary Policy Committee was able to extract more and more money out of the banking system, which it was not able to do because of the reverse repo rate operations, because in that case, you have to sell the collateral in order to get the money. So this is a marginal standing deposit facility, which is similar to reverse repo operations, except in this case, there is no need for RBI to sell its collateral, in order to get money from banks. ठीक है. So this is what is standing deposit facility. आप इसको देखना समझना, right? Notes को you can refer, and still if you have any problem, you can comment so that I can read those comments and I can answer those doubts, right? But these kind of questions are very important for your prelims part, and that's why you need to understand it in a very conceptual manner, because otherwise you will not be able to answer the question in your preliminary examination. Okay. So this is the standing deposit facility. एक तरीके का, it is a kind of reverse repo operations only. There's only one thing which is not there, that is the RBI does not have to sell the collateral to the bank, and in this case the RBI can extract more and more money in a very quick manner. So with this background, let us come back to the survey now. With this background, let us come back to the survey. So first of all, global inflation. Inflationary pressures have dominated the global economic landscapes in FY23. We have discussed why. So this inflation, which we have witnessed throughout the year, it was because of the pent-up demand of the pandemic. Second, huge money which was pumped into the economy by every government because of its expansionary fiscal policy. And third, after the conflict in Europe, the prices of energy, the prices of fertilizers, the prices of wheat shot up. So because of this, the inflation has been the biggest problem part in the financial year 23. And for this, globally, every country, every central bank have tightened its monetary policy, have gone for a monetary tightening. मॉनेटरी टाइटनिंग का मतलब इंक्रीज द रेट, पॉलिसी रेट, इंक्रीज द पॉलिसी रेट, इंडिया में कह लो इंक्रीज द रेपो रेट. दैट मीन्स यू वांट to make it difficult for the banks to take money from the RBI, ठीक है, because you want to stop the supply of money into the public. So that's why every country, every central bank has increased its repo rate, has increased its policy rate, and this is known as monetary tightening. You're tightening the supply of money into the market. So you can see the US central bank has raised the policy rate by 425 basis points, that is equal to 4.25%. Similarly, European Central Bank has raised it by 300 basis points. Right. So this is how globally every central bank have tightened its monetary policy cycle to ensure the inflation comes within the target level. And for every country, the inflation target is different. For example, in India, the inflation target is 2 to 6%. And for US Central Bank, the target of inflation is 2%. Right? So every country has its own inflation depending upon their own macroeconomic fundamentals. Right? Let us come back to India. Response by the Monetary Policy Committee of RBI. So Monetary Policy Committee has implemented a 115 basis point, that is 1.15% reduction between March 20 and May 2020. So this was the period of pandemic. So in pandemic, the inflation was well below 6%. The inflation was well below 6%. So inflation was not a challenge. So that is why the RBI reduced the repo rate in order to ensure on its second most important priority, that is growth. And for that purpose, it reduced the repo rate. Then the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, has maintained a status quo on the policy repo rate between May 20 and February 2022. उसके बाद से लगभग जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमिटी है उसने रेपो रेट को कांस्टेंट रखा है, बिकॉज इन्फ्लेशन अभी भी was within that tolerance limit. So there was no problem with that. But since January 2022, when the inflation breached the limit of 6%, and now the RBI Monetary Policy Committee triggered into action, and now it started to tighten its monetary policy. So RBI initiated the monetary tightening policy since January 2022. उसके पहले तो हमारा फोकस था ग्रोथ पे, and that's why we were reducing the repo rate or we were keeping it as a constant. But since January 2022, the RBI has initiated the monetary tightening cycle, and globally every country has done the same. Now, monetary development. So that is what we have discussed. Is that first, standing deposit facility. So this is a new tool of Monetary Policy Committee which has been announced by the RBI, right? So this facility allows for the deposit of excess funds by the bank with RBI, right? Excess funds by the banks. Bank से कहाँ जाएगा पैसा? RBI, without the necessity of collateral in the form of G6, right? So now the RBI does not need to deposit the collateral to the banks to get the money. In contrast to standing deposit facility, reverse repo operations require the RBI to deposit collateral in the form of government assets in order to borrow money from the commercial banks. Okay. When the central bank has to absorb a tremendous amount of money from the banking system through the reverse repo window, it becomes difficult because the RBI will not have that much of collateral, right? This was happened during the time of demonetization also. Demonetization के समय भी यही हुआ था. RBI को बहुत ज्यादा पैसा बैंकिंग से उठाना था, but it did not have that amount of collateral to sell. ठीक है. But उस समय standing deposit facility था नहीं, right? So in that case, RBI faced a very huge problem. But this time, RBI has initiated this new. Fixed reverse repo operations will remain a part of RBI's toolkit as its operation will be at the discretion of the RBI, unlike the SDF where discretion with banks as to when the stores are surplus. This basically line says कि जो already fixed reverse repo rate operation था, that is a standard RBI Monetary Policy Committee tool, that will be as it is. वो रहेगा, वो कहीं जा नहीं रहा है. uske over and above you have the standing deposit facility. So fixed reverse repo rate operations will still be there. बट देखो होता क्या है कि जो फिक्स्ड रिवर्स रेपो रेट ऑपरेशंस है जिसमें बैंक्स डिपॉजिट देयर मनी टू विद द आरबीआई एंड आरबीआई सेल्स इट्स कोलैटरल, सो ये करेगा कौन? दिस ऑपरेशन इज एट द डिस्क्रिशन ऑफ द आरबीआई. So for fixed reverse repo rate operations, if RBI thinks that it needs to borrow money, then only this process will be initiated. So there's no discretion with the banks. If the banks want to deposit its money with RBI, and if the RBI is not ready to accept that money, then it will not happen, because the power of reverse repo rate operation lies with the RBI. But in the case of standing deposit facility, the discretion lies with the banks. If the banks think that yes, I want to deposit money with the RBI, so it can do, because the discretion in this case lies with the banks and not with the RBI. So this is again an important point. Who has the power to initiate this process, right? So to initiate the fixed reverse repo rate operations, you need the consent of the RBI. RBI is at the leading hand, and to do the standing deposit facility, the power lies with the bank. The discretion lies with the bank. As it is non-collateralized, SDF rate will be higher than FRR. FRR का मतलब this one, fixed reverse repo rate, right? Because just imagine, in fixed reverse repo rate, the RBI has to sell its collateral to get the money, but in standing deposit facility, you don't need to have any collateral. So if you're not giving any collateral, then you will be charged a higher interest rate. So that is why if the RBI takes the money through SDF facility, then it has to give more and more interest to the bank, because it is not selling its collateral, right? So that is why, because SDF is a non-collateralized facility, SDF rate will be higher. That means RBI will have to pay a higher interest to the bank, right? Because it is not selling any collateral, because it is not selling any collateral to banks, right? So this is how it is a new standing deposit facility. Okay? Okay. Now, so see, this is how the RBI Monetary Policy Committee has increased its repo rates. You see, till 8 April it was unchanged, and from 4th May 2022, now the RBI Monetary Policy Committee started to increase the repo rate. So from 4 to 4.4, 4.4 to 4.9, and now it is at 6.25. And in the last February 2023 Monetary Policy Committee meeting, the last meeting as of now, it further increased the repo rate to 25 basis point. That means by 0.25%. So currently the repo rate is close to 6.5%. So देखो 4% से कितना बढ़ा? 6.5%, but that means 2.5% का हमारा आपको रेपो रेट बढ़ा है, because inflation अभी भी is hovering around 6%. ठीक है, so अभी भी जो हमारा आपका core inflation है, वो अब headline inflation has come down to 5.8%, but अभी भी जो core inflation है, it is still around 6% and more than 6%. So that is the problem, and that's why Monetary Policy Committee in its last meeting further increased the repo rate. ठीक है. So this is the monetary tightening cycle which every country across the globe, every central bank across the globe has performed. ठीक है. So इसकी वजह से जो supply of money है into the economy has been cut down to a great extent. But इससे problem क्या होगा आपको पता है? Growth पे impact पड़ता है, ये हमने last में भी देखा था. Because now you're making it much more difficult for the public to get money. And the public will find it much more difficult to get the money. They will not try to invest, or they will not try to demand, they will not try to purchase house. So in that case, the growth might suffer. So this is the very delicate balance which has to be ensured. And that's why Monetary Policy Committee is always in a dilemma. कि समय करे क्या? Already the growth is, not at its best, and the inflation has also increased to a large extent, right? So this is the challenge which Monetary Policy Committee has faced throughout the year, but it has been very much credible. It has been very much effective in ensuring that balance between growth and inflation, right? So next is the reverse money and broad money. So इसको भी थोड़ा सा let us understand basics, ठीक है? Because in class we discuss this thing in detail. तो जब class में पढ़ते हैं, so this topic is around 4-5 hours we discuss in detail everything. But this is only a kind of introductory session where you just need to know about prelims part, which has been discussed only in the survey from survey perspective. That's why इसके जो survey के perspective से है, only those things I am telling. So यहाँ पे हम लोग को एक चीज समझना पड़ेगा, money multiplier. So money multiplier, the survey has talked about money multiplier, and money multiplier is equal to M3 by M0. So M3 is equal to broad money, and this is known as reserve money or high powered money. Reserve money or high powered money. ठीक है, रिजर्व मनी और हाई पावर्ड मनी. अब ये होता क्या है, M0 और M3? Suppose this is the RBI, these are the banks, these are the industries, these are the public, ठीक है. So first of all, first point, only RBI in India is responsible or has the authority to pump money into the economy, है ना, पूरे इंडिया की इकोनॉमी. बिकॉज आरबीआई क्या करता है, इट प्रिंट्स करेंसी. वॉट एवर नोट्स यू हैव, उसको कोई ना कोई प्रिंट किया है. तो हु हैज द अथॉरिटी टू प्रिंट? आरबीआई. And then this printed currency will be put into the banks, and then banks will give it to the public. This is how it functions. So who has that authority? It is only the authority of RBI to print the money and to then give the money to the banks so that the banks can lend those money to the industry or public. So suppose RBI has printed 10,000 rupees. RBI has printed 10,000 rupees. So this is the liability of RBI. This is the liability of RBI. Right? So this is known as M0. This is known as M0. So see, 10,000 rupees हमने RBI ने print किया. Print करके, this is known as hard cash, hard currency. So actually RBI has printed. So this constitutes the liability of the RBI, and this is known as reserve money or high powered money. कि आरबीआई कितना पैसा प्रिंट करके इकोनॉमी में डाला है, दैट इज नोन एज रिजर्व मनी और द हाई पावर्ड मनी. अब जब ये पैसा बैंक्स के पास जाएगा, फॉर एग्जांपल आउट ऑफ द 10,000, 5,000 गोज टू दिस बैंक एंड 5,000 गोज टू दिस बैंक. सो बैंक्स क्या करेगा अब उस 5,000 रुपए का? बैंक्स विल ट्राई टू गिव लोन्स वर्थ ₹20,000. Banks will try to give loans worth ₹20,000. Over and above 5,000, the banks will give more and more loans. इसी को कहते हैं मनी मल्टीप्लाई कर रहा है, right? Because banks can do this, right? So actual currency है कितना मार्केट में? This is 10,000. But उसके ऊपर, because the banks have lended more money over and above what it had, that is why the M3 will be higher than M0. Kya? M3 will be, so this is known as M3. M3 is basically the total money supply. M3 basically measures the total money supply. How much money is basically in the whole economy. That is not how much money the RBI has printed at the first place. Because the banks have created more money out of that which it had, that is why the actual money which is there in the economy is more than how much the RBI has actually printed. ठीक है, तो होता है ना कि जैसे आप मान लो बैंक को, you go to the bank, you deposit your 1 लाख रुपए, आपने बैंक को डिपॉजिट किया 1 लाख, अब बैंक क्या करेगा, उसी 1 लाख का, अब आप 1 लाख तो निकालोगे नहीं कल, आप 5,000 निकालोगे, 10,000 निकालोगे, तो बैंक क्या करेगी, 50,000 का फर्दर किसी को लोन दे देगी। तो टोटल मनी कितना हो गया इकोनॉमी में, 1 लाख आपका और उस पे 50,000 का लोन दे रखा है आपने, तो टोटल कितना हो गया, 1.5 लाख। समझो यहाँ पे, सपोज you are a person, you go to the bank and you deposited your 10,000 rupees to the bank, but you're not going to take out the money. For example, this is 1 lakh, so you're not going to take out the money, right? You might take out 5,000, 4,000. Rarely ऐसा होता है कि आप अपना सारा पैसा एक निकाल लेते हो, कुछ लोग निकालते हैं, but maximum people do not do that. So what the banks will do, banks will, out of that 10,000 which is deposited with the banks will give 5,000 as a loan to some other person. So इससे total money कितना हो गया, which is there in the economy, which is circulating in the economy, it is 10,000 plus 5,000, so it will be 15,000. So this is how the money multiplies. This is how the money multiplies. So if the banks do not lend, then the money will not multiply. The M3 will be equal to M0. But if the banks will multiply those money, then the M3 by M0 will be greater than 1. So money multiplied can be greater than 1, it can be equal to 1, it can be less than 1. It can be less than 1. So M3, M1 से M3, M0 से बड़ा कब होगा, when the money is being lended by banks. Banks are lending more and more money, is equal to 1, मतलब banks are not lending any money. उस केस में M3 is equal to M0 हो जाएगा. और less than 1 का मतलब, सपोज कि RBI has printed 10,000 rupees, but 2,000 ब्लैक मनी में चला गया, वो इंडियन इकोनॉमी से बाहर चला गया, मान लो आपने स्विस बैंक में जमा कर दिया, सो उस केस में M3 विल बी लेस देन M0, सो इट विल बी लेस देन 1. ब्लैक मनी के केस में आपका ये हो जाएगा. ठीक है, सो ये होता है आपका मनी मल्टीप्लायर. M0 इज इक्वल टू द बेस, दिस इज द बेस, इसलिए इसको कहते हैं हम लोग मॉनेटरी बेस भी, इसको हम लोग कहते हैं मॉनेटरी बेस भी. So this is why it is called as base, because this is actually the money which has been printed by RBI and put in the economy. इसी बेस के ऊपर बैंक्स फर्दर एंड फर्दर लोन देके इसको मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं. So the more and more, the higher the value of money multiplier is, that means more and more banks are lending money to the public. So the survey has used this term. So first of all, M3 हो गया और M0 हो गया. So what is M0? M0 is the total liability of the RBI. It is the total liability of the RBI. So M0 is equal to currency in circulation plus total currency deposited in banks, right? So currency in circulation plus total currency deposited with RBI. So currency in circulation, what does currency in circulation means? It is basically the total amount of currency which is with the public. ठीक है, the hard cash होता है ना कि we have some amount of currency, and this is the total currency which is deposited in the RBI. How much currency is deposited with the RBI? So currency in circulation is equal to कितना currency हमारे पास है, physical currency, hard currency जो हमारे पास है ना, and then this is the total currency which is deposited with the RBI. So this is basically the liability of the RBI. But M3 क्या होगा? M3 will be more than M0. And what is M3? It is the currency with public plus demand deposit of public with banks plus time deposit of public with banks. So this is the difference between M0 and M3. So M3 is equal to currency with the public. So for example, you might have some currency, hard cash with you right now, 100 rupees, 1000 rupees, and then you might have your demand deposit. So demand deposit, that means your current account, matlab those money which you can take out anytime, right? You go to the ATM and you can take out any money. So that is the demand deposit public with the banks, and then you have the time deposit. Time deposit comes with the fixed deposit, which you cannot take out at any point of time. You can take it only after a particular year. So all those FDs and other things, so those are known as time deposit of the public with the banks. So this is known as M3. This is known as M3, right? And then survey वही बात कर रहा है. Survey is talking about money multiplier, right? So M3 ये हो गया, M0 ये हो गया. So there's only one thing आपको last में याद रखना है, which is relevant for you. You have to understand what is M0. That is the reserve money, monetary base, high powered money, जिसको हम लोग M0 कहते हैं. So M0 is basically the total amount of money, currency which RBI has printed and put into the economy. M3 is basically the current money supply. So इसी को हम लोग कहते हैं money supply. So this is basically the money which is totally available there in the economy. ठीक है? Which is totally available there in the economy. So M3 will be equal to M0 if the banks do not lend money, right? But generally all the banks lend money. That's why M3 is greater than M0. So इसी चीज को सर्वे ने डिस्कस किया है. यहाँ पे देखो आप, right? The money multiplier, the ratio of M3 by M0. M3 is equal to what? Money supply, broad money, and M0 is equal to monetary base, high powered money, reserve money. So this is the total liability of the RBI, and this is actually the money which is there in the economy, has broadly remained stable at an average of 5.1 over April to December 2022 compared to 5.2 in the corresponding period of the previous year. 5.1 मतलब लगभग 5 मान लो. तो if the RBI prints currency and puts into the economy 100 rupees, but the total supply in the money, but the total supply of the money in the economy is 5 times, that means 500, right? So this is the money multiplier, and money multiplier has been stable. So last year it was 5.2 during the same period. This year it was 5.1. That means banks are lending less money. तभी वो 5.2 से 5.1 हुआ है. So that is good because we want to control the inflation. We want banks to not lend more and more money. So as a question prelims में आएगा आपका. So if the inflation is high, the money multiplier should reduce or increase, right? If the repo rate increases, the money multiplier will increase or decrease. If the reverse repo rate increases, what will be its impact on money multiplier? So if reverse repo rate increases, that means banks has much more incentive to deposit its money with RBI. So why will the bank lend it to the public? So in that case, the money multiplier will come down. So by that, you have to understand all these links, which leads to inflation, right? Then cash reserve ratio. So cash reserve ratio is basically the amount of cash which every bank in India have to deposit with RBI. So cash reserve ratio was also increased because the RBI wanted to control the inflation. So now more and more money the banks has to deposit it with the RBI. Then the monetary policy transmission. So what do you mean by monetary policy transmission? So see, one is monetary policy and the other one is the monetary policy transmission. So monetary policy is between RBI and banks. So this is here the monetary policy comes, and between banks and public, the monetary policy transmission comes. So monetary policy में मतलब मान लो if the RBI is increasing the repo rate because it wants the banks, it wants to make it difficult for the banks to take money from the RBI. But क्या वो transmit हो रहा है? That means whether that repo rate is transmitting to the bank's lending rate and deposit rate. Because हमारे लिए तो lending rate और deposit rate से फर्क पड़ता है. We don't need to bother about repo rate. Repo rate is the thing which is happening between these two parties. right? So how effectively the changes in repo rate is leading to changes in the lending rate and deposit rate. If it is very quick, then it is good for us. RBI ने repo rate increase किया, in day after two, these thing also increases. But the problem with India and Indian monetary policy thing is that the transmission takes a lot of time. So if the RBI is increasing the repo rate, but the transmission to this particular thing is not happening. But during this time, during this whole period, we have seen that the lending rate and deposit rate of banks have increased in consonance with the changes in the policy rate. That means monetary policy transmission has been better as compared to the previous time. Now, development in the GSEC market. So this we have already understood in the last class. कि किस तरीके से the GSEC market का जो yield है, it was increasing. So you can see the yield of the GSEC is on rise. And why? We have seen that US Fed has raised the interest rate, so a lot of money was sucked out of the Indian economy and put to the US economy, right? So that we have already understood. Okay. So the GSEC yield has spiked due to the hawkish stance of the major central banks and the hardening of the global bond yield. Then banking sectors, right? Because monetary policy, this chapter has also been talked about. This section has also been discussed about the financial stability. The financial stability के लिए banking sector is a very important element of that. So last class में again we have discussed about the whole crisis, right? The twin deficit, the twin balance sheet problem. किस तरीके से बैंकिंग सेक्टर का एनपीए बहुत ज्यादा था एंड इसी की वजह से ग्रोथ आपका नहीं देखने को मिला, right? So this chapter basically gives the exact details that what is the current status of Indian banks, right? So the continuous efforts of the year has led to a healthier balance sheet of the banks. We have discussed how this government has effectively resolved this whole issue, right? So first of all, let us understand some basic term. What is NPA? So NPA means any loan for which the principal or interest payment, any loan for which the interest or the principal payment has not been paid for more than 90 days. So that means 3 months. So any loan जिसका interest या principal नहीं pay किया गया है beyond 3 months, तो उसको हम लोग non-performing asset कह देते हैं, because it becomes a non-performing asset for the bank. Then what is the provisioning coverage ratio? So provisioning coverage ratio का मतलब, for example, if there is a bank, right, it has given a loan of 100 rupees to a company A, right, but the company has returned 30 rupees and 70 rupees the company is not able to return, right? So now it has been more than 3 months, 3 महीने हो चुके हैं, तो अब इस केस में एनपीए कितना हो जाएगा? 70. So this is known as gross non-performing asset, because 70 rupees the company has not been able to pay back and it has been more than 3 months, so now it will be counted as a gross non-performing asset. But generally what the banks do, that banks out of their profit, they reserve certain money to compensate for the loss, कि कल को अगर मान लो ये कंपनी ये पैसा कभी दे ही नहीं पाया, the company was not able, the company did not pay in the future, so the banks try to reserve some money out of their profit to compensate for the losses. So इसी को कहते हैं provisioning coverage ratio. How much the banks is provisioning money out of its profit to compensate for the losses in future out of its gross non-performing assets. So इसी के लिए आपके पास मान लो 70% provisioning coverage ratio है. That means 70 rupees का 70%, that means 63 rupees, not 63, 49 rupees. So 49 rupees banks अपने profit में से, जो अपना profit कमाता है because of other operations, they will keep it as a reserve, so that कल को if this loan is not able to come back, if that 70 rupees is not able to come back to the bank, so bank have some money to compensate for that loss. So this is known as provisioning coverage ratio. And the third is the capital adequacy ratio. Capital adequacy ratio, just understand, this is a very important concept which is very, very important for your exams. What is capital adequacy ratio? Let us understand. इसी को हम लोग CAR कहते हैं। नाउ सपोज इंडस्ट्री, एग्रीकल्चर एंड सर्विसेज सेक्टर, राइट। Suppose these are the three sectors: industrial sector, agriculture sector, and services sector. Now the banks have given any bank मान लो SBI. So SBI is given 100 rupees of loan to industry, 50 rupees of loan to the agriculture sector, and 200 rupees loan to the services sector. So what is the total loan which SBI has given? It is equal to 350, right? But don't you think that all these three sectors are quite different in nature? They have their own set of challenges. So the probability of agriculture sector to pay back the loan is lower than the probability of the services sector to pay back the loan, because services sector is quite good in India as compared to agriculture sector, and industrial sector is quite good as compared to agriculture sector, right? So this is where the risk for the bank, the risk for the bank is different for different sector, right? हर एक सेक्टर के लिए बैंक का जो रिस्क है वो अलग अलग होगा, right? So in that case RBI gives a risk to every sector. For example, the RBI will give a risk factor of 2 to industry, 3 to agriculture, and 1.5 for services sector. ठीक है, बिकॉज सर्विस सेक्टर हैज द लीस्ट प्रोबेबिलिटी, तो उसका जो रिस्क फैक्टर है वो सबसे कम होगा। एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर सबसे कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, जरूरी नहीं है लोन मिलेगा, सो इन दैट केस द रिस्क फैक्टर विल बी द हाईएस्ट, एंड इन द इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर इट विल बी the risk sector will be in average of the two things, so it will around 2. So now the banks, so now every bank has to calculate its, now every bank as per the risk factor given by RBI has to calculate its risk weighted assets. इसी को हम लोग कहते हैं RWA, risk weighted assets, because these are the asset to the bank, because these are the loans which the banks have given. But now we have to calculate the risk weighted assets, matlab we have to account for the risk according to that asset. So in that case, what will be the total risk weighted assets? So 100 into 2 plus 50 into 3 plus 200 into 1.5, that is equal to 200 plus 150 plus 300, that is equal to 3, 4, 450, 550. That is equal to 550. ठीक है, so this is the risk weighted assets. पहले कितना था? 350. So this was the asset for the bank initially. But now if you accounted for the risk, so now the new risk weighted assets, accounting for the risk to that asset, it will be 550. Now what is CAR? It is basically the amount of capital as a percentage to RWA which you have to reserve, which you have to keep. मतलब इस रिस्क वेटेड एसेट का कितना पैसा आपको रखना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज ये एसेट कल को लॉस भी तो हो सकता है. So out of this asset, you have to reserve some money or you have to keep some money to compensate for the losses. So as per the Basel norms, as per the Basel 3 norms, the CAR has to be kept as 10.5% of risk weighted assets. That means 10.5% of 550. ठीक है, so this is how you have to keep the risk weighted assets. ठीक है, so ये होता है आपका capital adequacy ratio, how much capital a bank has to keep as a proportion to its risk-weighted assets, so that in future, if there's any loss, the banks are able to compensate for that loss. So as per the Basel 3, the guidelines, हमारा कितना compulsory है 10.5% है, but RBI has made it compulsory that every bank has to keep 11.5%, right? So RBI ने 1% ज्यादा रखा है, ठीक है. इसमें भी फिर टीयर 1 कैपिटल होता है, टीयर 2 कैपिटल होता है, काउंटर साइक्लिकल बफर्स होते हैं. So that is somewhere else we will discuss. यहाँ पे नहीं उसका काम है. But this is what is capital adequacy ratio, and this is known as risk weighted assets. You have to understand this, right? So now we'll understand what the survey has to talk about the status of the bank. So now you can see. So ये देखो, RBI has mandated the banks to keep the CAR above 11.5%. ठीक है. So capital adequacy हो गया, provisioning coverage ratio हो गया, NPA हो गया, status of bank. तो स्टेटस ऑफ बैंक में हमने देखा था 2004 से 2014 तक there was a credit boom. In the last lecture we have understood there was a credit boom. So the total loan as a percentage of GDP, it increased from 36.5% to 57.3%. So the total loan as a percentage of GDP increased by this time. और इसी समय बहुत ज्यादा रेकलेस लोन भी दिए गए थे. लास्ट क्लास में हमने देखा कि a lot of reckless loans were given by the banks. Also, the banks were hiding their bad loans because a lot of loans have converted into a liability. Banks were not able to get that interest or principal back, but banks were hiding it. Finally, at the end of 2015, उसी समय Raghuram Rajan was there and he told that let us do a asset quality review. That जितने भी banks के पास asset हैं उनका review करना है, because we don't know what is the problem, how much NPA is there, because banks are hiding it. So we have to have a very strong effective asset quality review. और जैसे ही asset quality review हुआ तो जो NPAs है FY15 में 4.3% था, वो बढ़ के कितना हो गया 11.2% in FY18. So this policy was brought by Raghuram Rajan. उसके बाद तो वो रिटायर हो गए, but उसके बाद asset quality review हुआ and we started to know about what is the exact state of crisis. And now it was exposed that पहले देखो 4.3% NPA था, मतलब अगर बैंक 100 रुपए दिया है तो उसका 4.3% बैंक के लिए NPA था. NPA मतलब 90 दिन से ज्यादा पे नहीं हुआ है. But now it increased to 11.2%. उसके बाद गवर्नमेंट ने काफी ज्यादा रिफॉर्म्स लाए, इंसॉल्वेंसी बैंक्रप्सी कोड, आरपीसी एक्ट में अमेंडमेंट्स, एसेट रिकंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनीज, ठीक है, बैंक रिकैपिटलाइजेशन बॉन्ड्स, एंड गवर्नमेंट हैज ब्रॉट मेनी थिंग्स, एंड दैट इज व्हाई द एनपीए इन FY 2021 फेल टू 7.3%. सो 4.3 से बढ़ा 11.2 पे, 11.2 से घट के 7.3. And there's again a very good news that in September 2022 it has fell to its 7-year low of 5%. So this is the credit which is to be given to the government of India, that they have really worked with the banks to ensure that the bank's balance sheet improves, and that's why the NPA has reached to its 7-year low in the September 2022. Similarly, the capital adequacy ratio and the provisioning coverage ratio. Capital adequacy ratio कितना है 16%. What is the requirement? 11.5%. So capital adequacy ratio is also at a very good level, and similarly the provisioning coverage ratio is at 71.5%. So generally provisioning coverage ratio, if it is more than 70%, it is good. So you can see that it is at 71.5%. So that is why the banks are in a very good position. And we have seen that corporate balance sheet has also improved. And because of this, the banks are ready to loan, they give loan, and the corporates are ready to take loan. And that's why, you know, the investment cycle is going to pick up in the year if the conflict in Europe does not escalate beyond a point. So इसलिए इंडिया के जितने भी फंडामेंटल्स हैं वो बहुत स्ट्रांग है, and that's why India will be growing in its अमृत काल. Now, so ये देखो, these are the comparisons किस तरीके से declining scheduled commercial banks, GNPA, gross NPA, or provisioning coverage ratio, how it has increased, right? Broad-based improvement in GNPA. So for every sector, the gross non-performing asset has reduced. So you can see for agriculture it has reduced, For industry, it has reduced. For services, it has reduced. And for personal loans, it has reduced. So that is the credit which should be given to the government and also to the RBI, that किस तरीके से NPA हर एक सेक्टर में कम हुए हैं, ठीक है. And because of that, because of the strong balance sheet in the banks, you can see the bank credit growth. Non-food bank credit growth, matlab the credit the banks which gives to the non-food sector, that is for the public, to the industry, to the house loans and other things like. So you can see that because the bank's balance sheet has improved, banks are lending now more and more money, and that's why the investment cycle will be rising up in the future. Similarly, you can see the status of NBFC. तो NBFC में आपको पता है 2018 में IL&FS crisis आया था, but despite that, the NBFC has been performing at in a very much resilient manner. You can see the credit to NBFC has also increased, and the aggregate credit by NBFC is also increased. So the non-banking financial sector, which is very important for the rural sector, and it is very important for the infrastructure sector, because NBFC reaches to those people, to those consumers which are inaccessible by the banks. ठीक है. So NBFC से पैसा जो होता है, it is generally for first in industrial sector जिनको long term loan चाहिए 30 साल 40 साल के लिए, and for those people who does not have that kind of paperwork and things which they need to do to take loans from the bank, so they go to the NBFCs. So NBFCs reach to those people who are unreachable by the traditional banking sector. And you can see that declining in GNPA. So for NBFC also, the NPA has declined, and it has declined in all the sectors. So this is the gross, and these are the sector wise. So you can see the largest sector with the GNPA is 46.2, and after that services, after that personal, and then IBC, insolvency and bankruptcy road, has been a big bang reform which has been brought by the government. अब इसमें होता क्या है? Just imagine, for example, I have an industry. I have taken a loan from the bank of 200 crores. But now I am not in a situation to pay back the money to the bank. That means I have gone bankrupt. I don't have any money to pay back to the bank. So in that case, I have to apply for the insolvency, that I don't have the money. Please sell my assets, do whatever you can, but I'm not in a situation to give the money back to you. So initially it was at the discretion of that person. If that person does not go to the bank, then insolvency resolution against the company cannot initiate. So उस समय होता क्या था कि even if I'm not able to pay back the money, I will just sit, I will enjoy, I will not do anything. Because the creditors, the banks did not have any power to initiate insolvency proceedings against me. So until unless I do not go to the banks and say that, boss, I have gone bankrupt, I wish to apply for insolvency, then till that, nothing will happen. I have to go and apply for that. But under IBC, this has been the structural change. Now the creditors, the banks, can themselves initiate insolvency proceedings against you. So even if you try to hide, even if you try to budge, even if you try to escape, it will not help, because the creditors have the power. So that is why it is said that India is now no longer a defaulter's paradise. India is now no longer a defaulter's paradise. Defaulter's paradise का मतलब पहले क्या होता था? You default paying back the money to the banks, but no one is going to do anything. You just enjoy, you just wait and watch. But now, if you're not able to pay back the money, your loan has become NPA. The creditors, that is the banks, can initiate an insolvency proceedings against you. And if the insolvency resolution passed by them is accepted, then they will be taking control of your company. So see how does it functions. ये कैसे काम करता है ये समझो. So suppose these are the creditors. For example, let us say creditors का मतलब SBI हो गया, HDFC हो गया. These are the banks. ठीक है. Now these creditors have not got their money back. So they will go to the NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, and they will say that, see, this company has got insolvency, this company has got bankrupt, this company is not in a state to pay back me my money. So I want to initiate an insolvency proceeding against this company. पहले ये नहीं था. अब this company can go to the NCLT and request for that. If the NCLT accepts it, yes, you're right, this company has got bankrupt, it needs to be brought under the insolvency proceedings. So once the NCLT accepts that, then insolvency professionals will be constituted. IP. इसको constitute कौन करता है? Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India, which is a statutory body. ठीक है? So insolvency professionals are being constituted, and these insolvency professionals are people who are very much professional, right? To ensure that all those companies which has gone bankrupt, उसको resolve कर सके, कि वापस से वो company start हो जाए. अगर कुछ problem है, so how that company can be helped, so that that company again starts to become active. Or if that company is not being able to become active, that company has completely lost whatever it had, the company cannot be revived, so उस case में the company needs to be sold. ठीक है? So this insolvency professionals can either resolve that company or it can sell that company, that means liquidate that company. ठीक है? Liquidate the company. Right. So insolvency professionals are constituted by Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India. Right. And then also the committee of creditors is constituted. So committee of creditors का मतलब जितने भी creditors हैं, SBI, HDFC, Punjab National Bank, उन सबका एक committee constitute होगा, and this will get the entire power of the company, entire management of the company will come under their control. ठीक है? So the entire management of this company which has gone bankrupt, अब उस सारा कंपनी आपसे छिन जाएगा, and the management will shift to the committee of creditors. So that's why the defaulters now fear, they're very in a state of fear, because the control of their company will be taken away once the NCLT accepts their insolvency proceedings against them. So committee of creditors will accept will take the complete control of the management of that company. So this is why now to do not pay a loan and escape has become a very difficult job. So that's why insolvency and bankruptcy board has been a very instrumental. इसकी वजह से NPA काफी decline हुआ है. Now the people are very much afraid of defaulting their interest payment or principal payment. This has brought a structural change, right? So IBC has facilitated exit of distressed firms by a public auction-based resolution model. Public auction का मतलब that company is sold to the public if that company is not able to pay back its amount to the bank. It has led to a behavioral change, right, among the debtors. ठीक है? And this whole process is known as corporate insolvency resolution process. इस पूरे process को हम लोग CIRP कहते हैं. Insolvency professionals are appointed by IBBI, Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India, and the minimum default threshold, मतलब कितना अमाउंट अगर आप नहीं देते हो बैंक को, व्हाट इज द मिनिमम थ्रेशोल्ड? सो 1 करोड़. इफ द इंटरेस्ट और द प्रिंसिपल is more than 1 crore, then such cases can be brought under this particular code. So this is the table which has been put by the economic survey, और economic survey कहता है कि 553 companies have been brought under resolution, मतलब those company has been resolved, and 1807 companies were not being able to resolve. उसको resolve करना मुश्किल था. That's why those companies were completely sold. Those companies were liquidated. So this is how it is. And then aggregate resolution value as a percentage of aggregate claim, that is 30.8. So this figure you have to just remember, 30.8. इसका मतलब क्या है कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल टोटल लोन जो एनपीए था, जो जिसमें जिसको रिजॉल्व करना था, इफ दैट वाज 100 रुपीज, तो उस 100 रुपीज को इंसॉल्वेंसी प्रोफेशनल्स ने रिजॉल्व करके, ठीक है, कितना वैल्यू उसका फाइनली आया बैंक्स के पास? 31 रुपीज. मतलब बैंक्स के पास आना कितना था? इनिशियली 100 रुपीज, बट 100 रुपीज तो पॉसिबल है नहीं. तो इंसॉल्वेंसी प्रोफेशनल्स ने उस चीज को मैनेज करके कितना पैसा पॉसिबल करके रिटर्न करवाया? 31. सो ओनली 30% was resolved. बाकी 70% तो लॉस हो गया बैंक के लिए, right? So this is the resolution value सो टोटल वैल्यू ऑफ द क्लेम्स वाज 100 जो बैंक्स को चाहिए था, बट इससे कितना रिजॉल्व होके आ पाया 30 रुपीज. सो 30/100 दैट इज इक्वल टू 30%. सो ओनली 30% ऑफ द, सो ये देखो ये एग्रीगेट क्लेम्स है 7,90,626 करोड़. ठीक है, 7,90,000 इतना क्लेम था बैंक्स का, और बैंक्स को मिला कितना, इतना 2,43,452. सो बेसिकली 31% आया. देन कंपनीज ऑर्डर फॉर लिक्विडेशन में कितना है 1807 गया. ठीक है, और टाइम देखो कितना लगा. सो इंसॉल्वेंसी एंड बैंक्रप्सी कोड में टाइम लिमिट भी है कि कितने टाइम में इस चीज को पूरा फुलफिल करना है. सो 330 डेज है उसका, बट दैट टाइम पीरियड कैन ऑल्सो बी एक्सटेंडेड. ठीक है, एक्सटेंडेड. तो देखो कितना लगा है, ऑन एन एवरेज 561 डेज लगा है इस को रिजॉल्व करने में, एंड वहां पे एवरेज लगा है 437 डेज. बट इट इज वेरी लेस बिकॉज पहले जो ये पूरा प्रोसेस होता था बिफोर द IBC era, before the insolvency and bankruptcy code, it was around 4.5 years on an average it took to resolve such kind of issues, but now the time period has been brought down. Then development in the capital markets. ठीक है, अगला chapter which the survey has discussed is about the capital market. So capital markets ज़्यादा important है नहीं, but you should understand some basic things. कैपिटल मार्केट पहले क्या होता है, कैपिटल मार्केट वो शेयर मार्केट जो आप देखते हो, that is broadly the capital market. So capital market में basically the debt and the equity instruments. The debt instruments का मतलब bond and equity instruments का मतलब share market. So all those things are traded. ठीक है, so उसी को हम लोग क्या कहते हैं, capital market. And capital market is basically the sale and exchange of the capital market is basically a market where debt and equity instruments are transacted. ठीक है, तो डेप्ट का मतलब बॉन्ड इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हो गया, जितने भी कॉर्पोरेट कंपनी के बॉन्ड्स हैं, नॉट गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स, ओनली कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड्स, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स कम अंडर द मनी मार्केट एंड दैट इज रेगुलेटेड बाय RBI. बट ये जो कैपिटल मार्केट है इसको रेगुलेट कौन करता है, सेबी. और इक्विटी का मतलब शेयर मार्केट. ठीक है, सो दैट इज हाउ इट इज. तो आपको पता होगा कि ये जो लास्ट ईयर था उसमें काफी ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम था. कैपिटल मार्केट वाज वेरी वोलेटाइल बिकॉज यूएस फेड ने जैसे ही इंक्रीज किया मॉनेटरी टाइटनिंग, सो अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल टुक देयर मनी आउट ऑफ द इंडियन कैपिटल मार्केट एंड दे शिफ्टेड देयर मनी टू द यूएस कैपिटल मार्केट. इसीलिए दिस मार्केट वाज वेरी वोलेटाइल ड्यूरिंग दिस होल ईयर. ठीक है, सो लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड द टूल्स ऑफ प्राइमरी मार्केट. सो सबसे पहले आपने नाम सुना होगा इनिशियल पब्लिक ऑफर, IPO. सो IPO क्या होता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई हैव अ कंपनी, or suppose you are watching this lecture, so suppose ki any institute, for example Chanakya IAS institute issues its share to the public for the first time. It has never done that thing in the past, it is doing this for the first time, so that is known as IPO. So whenever a company which has for the first time issued a share to the public, so one is a private company and the second one is a public company. Private company ka matlab those companies which has not issued its share to the public, but a public company means a company which has issued its share to the public. So whenever a private company for the first time thinks about selling its share to the public, that offer is known as IPO. So suppose this company was there, it has its 100% share, the promoter had 100% share. Now the company decides to sell 20% of share to the public. So this is happening for the first time. So this is known as IPO. पहली बार. But now, for example, in 2023, the company sold 20% share for the first time. Now in 2024, the company intends to sell more 10%. मतलब now it tries to sell extra 10% of share. तो पहले 20% कर ही दिया था, अब it wants to sell 10%. So this is the second time it is going to the public. It is not happening for the first time. For the first time when it goes, it is known as IPO. And when it goes for the second time, it is known as FPO. That is known as follow-on public offer. Right? So company already listed on exchange. The company has already issued a share to the public in the past. Now it intends to sell extra share to the public. So such kind of offer is known as FPO. And IPO का मतलब पहली बार. Then rights issue. So rights issue का मतलब क्या होता है कि whenever a company sells its share to the existing shareholder, जो ऑलरेडी उस कंपनी के शेयर होल्डर है, आप उसी को एक्स्ट्रा शेयर दे रहे हो, सो इसको कहते हैं राइट्स इशू. Similarly, you have preferential allotment. So preferential allotment का मतलब कि you are selling your share preferentially to a select group of investors. ठीक है, you're not going to the public, you're not selling it to your existing shareholder, rather you are selling those shares to a selected group of investors, which can be anyone for a company. So company has to decide to which investor it wants to sell the share. ठीक है, so यहाँ पे क्या होता है, IPO FPO में you are selling the share to the public, anyone can buy that. Rights issue में you are selling the share to the existing shareholders, और यहाँ पे you are selling the share to a selected group of investors which can be anyone. And then comes the qualified institutional placement. यहाँ पे क्या है, listed companies raise finance through issue of share to qualified institutional buyers. Qualified institutional buyers मतलब जो big buyers होते हैं. For example, mutual funds, they are very sophisticated investors. So mutual funds comes under this qualified institutional buyers. That means they are qualified. They are very mature. They are sophisticated investors. So अगर कोई कंपनी अपने शेयर को डायरेक्टली क्वालिफाइड इंस्टीट्यूशनल बायर्स को बेचती है, ना कि पब्लिक को इन जनरल देती है, so that is known as qualified institutional placements. ठीक है, so इस तरीके से IPO, FPO, rights issue, preferential allotment, qualified institutional placements, all these terms has been used in the survey. So you should be knowing about all these 5 things. Then how the primary market has followed. तो आप देख सकते हो कि लास्ट ईयर कितने सारे कंपनीज का IPO आया, जोमेटो का, नाइका का, ठीक है, LIC भी पहली बार IPO पे गया. So last year was a huge, large number of companies which has went for that initial public offer. Initial मतलब पहली बार, ATM, ठीक है. तो ये देखो आप IPOs, ठीक है. Last year 76 company was there in April to November 2021. This year, from April to, or the last year, April to November 2022, it increased to 104. So 104 companies went for IPO. ठीक है. Similarly, देखो आपका preferential allotment 233 से 298 हुआ. ठीक है. Debt का मतलब आपका bond. तो bond में भी 871 से 967 पे गया है. ठीक है. FPOs 0 से 1. ठीक है. So generally the capital market has performed very well. Many companies, many startups have went for that IPO and a huge investment has also come. So देखो last year investment आया था बहुत ज्यादा, इस साल थोड़ा कम आया है because this year the market has been very volatile because of the monetary tightening by the US. So जैसे US monetary tightening करते रहेगी, less money will come to the India, more money will go to the US. That's why जो amount raised हुआ है वो काफी कम है as compared to what was the amount raised last year. And this year also witnessed the largest IPO ever in the history of India, LIC, Life Insurance Corporation, uska bhi IPO hua, and that was the largest IPO in the history of the India. So this is how you should understand IPO, FPO, rights issue, QIPs, preferential allotments, right? Then comes secondary market. So secondary market और primary market में अंतर क्या होता है? So primary market का मतलब, for example, the transaction is happening for the first time. For example, I am the company and I've issued 1% share to you. So this is the primary market. For the first time I'm selling, or this is the first point of transaction, right? Now what will you do? You will sell your share to any other public, to any other person. So that is known as secondary market. So वहां पे I'm not selling my share. I have sold my share to you. This is for the first time. Now you are selling that share among yourself. So this is known as a secondary market transaction. So whatever happens in the Sensex share market, so that's nothing but the secondary market. And IPOs, FPOs are the primary market because वहां पे पहली बार share को खरीद या बेचा जा रहा है. But यहाँ पे the shares are traded among different people. So this is the stock market, right? So this is the stock market. ठीक है. तो stock market performance was also a resilient. ठीक है. So you can see this. आपको पता होगा last year the stock market. So देखो during the pandemic, the stock market saw a growth of Sensex Nifty saw a growth of 18% and Sensex saw a growth of 17%. तो आपको पता होगा pandemic के समय बहुत ज्यादा share market increase हुआ था. There was a huge increase in the share market. But this year the share market has been very volatile, and the reason, taking the money to the US because of the tightening by the US Fed. And because of that, most of the countries this year, and other because of the conflict in Europe, high inflation. So that's why the market this year has been very volatile. And that's why most countries have seen a negative increase in their stock market as compared to the last year. So you can see the Shanghai, China, Brazil, Korea, US, France, Germany, most of the stock market has seen a negative growth as compared to the last year. But just see about India, Nifty 3.7 and 3.9. That means कि stock market increased during the pandemic because a huge money was pumped into the economy. तो investors के पास बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा था, तो वो पूरी दुनिया में invest कर रहे थे. इंडिया में भी बहुत सारे पैसा बाहर से आया. बट ग्रेजुअली जब पैंडेमिक के बाद मॉनेटरी टाइटनिंग स्टार्ट हुआ, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट इन यूरोप की वजह से इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ा, तो अब पैसा मार्केट से निकलने लगा और यूएस फेड की टाइटनिंग की वजह से जितने भी डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज थे और जितने भी डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज थे उन सबका पैसा निकल के कहां चला गया? यूएस इकोनॉमी में, यूएस स्टॉक मार्केट में, साथ ही साथ इन्फ्लेशन एंड अदर थिंग्स. तो इसकी वजह से जो इस साल जो स्टॉक मार्केट का परफॉर्मेंस था, इट वाज नॉट एज गुड एज व्हाट वाज सीन ड्यूरिंग द पैंडेमिक. But despite all those things, still India's stock market has been resilient because it has seen a positive growth rate vis-a-vis the last year as compared to all other countries. You can see these are the all other countries, and every country have seen a negative growth rate. You can see that every country, China, Brazil, Korea, US, France, Germany, UK, Hong Kong, Japan, every country has witnessed a negative growth rate of its stock market this year as compared to the last year. ये क्यों हुआ? ये क्यों हुआ कि इंडिया में अभी भी पॉजिटिव है? बिकॉज हुआ क्या कि जो फॉरेन पोर्टफोलियो इन्वेस्टर्स थे, those people who have come from abroad to invest in India, those people took the money out because those people went back to the US and invested money. But there came the domestic investors. तो लास्ट ईयर डोमेस्टिक इन्वेस्टर्स जो पैसा लगाए हैं शेयर मार्केट में, वो काफी ज्यादा बढ़ा है. जो डीमेट अकाउंट्स थे उसका जो रजिस्ट्रेशन था वो काफी ज्यादा बढ़ा है. So despite the FPIs taking back their money to the US, the domestic investors has invested huge amount of money to the stock market, and that's why the stock market this year also was very resilient as what was there in the last year. So देखो retail participation, the capital market has increased, although now it has started to decline because वो जो golden period of stock market था pandemic के समय, जहाँ पे लोग बहुत ज़्यादा attract हो गए थे, stock market was increasing at a very exponential rate. Now the stock market has started to stabilize, and that's why the retail participation, that is the participation of public in the stock market, is declining. ठीक है. Then FPIs देखो, foreign portfolio investors, तो foreign portfolio investors ये देखो इस तरीके का, you can see this. So this is the year of pandemic, 2020 to 2021. You can see this is the graph which basically shows FPI, and this is the domestic institutional investors, domestic investors, and this is the mutual funds. So you can see that during the pandemic year, both domestic investors and mutual funds took out the money from the stock market. But the same year, foreign portfolio investors, because US में pandemic के समय इतना पैसा छापा गया, लंदन में इतना पैसा छापा गया कि those people had huge surplus of money. So that's why they were looking where to invest those monies, because government has printed the money and given it to them. So they were sitting on a huge cash pile, and that's why they were looking across the world where to invest, and that's why during that point of time they came to India and invested. But since then, when the US has started with monetary tightening, most of the foreign portfolio investors have started to take out their money from India. वो इंडिया से पैसा निकालने लगे. बट यहां पे देखो, द डोमेस्टिक इन्वेस्टर्स पॉजिटिव में आ गया, म्यूचुअल फंड्स पॉजिटिव में आ गया, एंड दैट इज व्हाई स्टिल द टोटल मनी इन्वेस्टेड इन सेकेंडरी मार्केट हैज बीन पॉजिटिव. So despite FPIs taking back their money, the domestic institutional investors and mutual fund have invested huge amount of money, and that's why our stock market has been resilient this year also. Then the survey capital market में lastly talks about the threat from the crypto market. You know that cryptocurrency or crypto asset was something which everyone was attracted towards at some point of time. But now, if you will see the last year, most of the cryptocurrencies have completely crashed. And you know that cryptocurrency regulator exchange, FTX, has also collapsed. So that's why the survey talks about that we need to have a global collaboration, because if we don't control cryptocurrencies, then what will be the impact of it? It will affect the overall financial stability of the country. It will affect the overall financial stability of the country, and to control or to regulate cryptocurrency, it cannot be done by a single country. You need to have a global collaboration. And hence the survey says that globally every country should come together and try to solve these issues Otherwise, every country will face this financial stability issue, which might affect the basic fundamentals of any economy. So that's why the survey says that, and there's a necessity of common approach to regulate the crypto ecosystem, right? So this is all about the capital market. Next, the survey talks about, it gives some basic detail about the insurance market. So insurance market is also very important. So insurance market, right? So insurance market is also very important, right? So survey basically uses two terms, which is important for our prelims perspective. One, the survey uses insurance penetration, and the second, the survey uses insurance density. So these are the two terms which is important from our prelims perspective. What is insurance penetration? So insurance penetration is basically the insurance premium to GDP. मतलब एक साल में टोटल इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम कितना पे किया जाता है डिवाइडेड बाय जीडीपी. सो इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम डिवाइडेड बाय जीडीपी. So that has been increasing, and now it has increased to 4.2% of the GDP. So इंश्योरेंस पेनिट्रेशन का मतलब प्रीमियम बाय जीडीपी. टोटल सारे लोगों कितना इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम देते हैं, लाइफ इंश्योरेंस और नॉन लाइफ इंश्योरेंस सब मिला के, है ना, व्हीकल इंश्योरेंस, फोन इंश्योरेंस, लैपटॉप इंश्योरेंस, लाइफ इंश्योरेंस, एवरी इंश्योरेंस का सबका प्रीमियम अमाउंट मिला दो, डिवाइड कर दो जीडीपी से, सो दैट इज नोन एज इंश्योरेंस पेनिट्रेशन. एंड इंश्योरेंस डेंसिटी इज इक्वल टू इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम बाय पॉपुलेशन. तो टोटल प्रीमियम है कितना एक साल में, उसको डिवाइड कर दो टोटल कंट्री का पॉपुलेशन. सो दैट हैज आल्सो इंक्रीज फ्रॉम $11.1 to $91 in 2021. That means the insurance premium divided by population has also increased. इसीलिए अभी जो इंडिया में पहले क्या था कि मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल वर अनअवेयर अबाउट द इंश्योरेंस सेक्टर. बहुत कम था अवेयरनेस, एंड दैट्स व्हाई नन ऑफ द पीपल were interested in going for life insurance or for vehicular insurance. But now with more and more awareness and better product delivery by the government and the life insurance and the other insurance companies, now more and more people have been investing or have been depositing or have been coming under the insurance sector, right? So important government initiatives, people more awareness about health security post the COVID-19, strong demographic factors, that means more and more people are are in the younger age population, and they're much more aware about the importance of insurance. A conducive regulatory environment, product innovations, and a vibrant distribution channels are supporting the insurance markets. तो इस तरीके से survey has given the diagram कि how the insurance penetration is increasing, how the insurance density is increasing. And these are the different schemes which has been brought by the government. तो इसको I have written it over here. You can go and check more about these things because यहाँ पे brief description है. But in exam, these schemes might be asked. What is Atmanirbhar Ayushman Bharat Yojana? What is PM Suraksha Bima Yojana? Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana? Fasal Bima Yojana? So you can go and check on the Google and on the government's website. What are these schemes? Who are covered? How much insurance benefit is being provided? What is the premium which someone has to pay? Which ministry has brought these schemes? So ये prelims के लिए आपके factual informations आपको हो जाएंगे. So you can go and check it on the internet. Then similarly, pension sector. Pension sector is also growing at a very good pace. Survey talks about. तो pension क्यों चाहिए हमें होता है? Why we need a pension? It is important because in old age you're not that productive. So you need a basic social security at one point of age. The rise of nuclear family. So most of the old people or most of the parents are living alone, and their child is working in cities. So that's why you again need a good pension so that you are financially independent. Rise in the cost of living, increased longevity. So now more and more people are, the life expectancy has increased in India because of the better health infrastructure. Assured monthly income ensures a dignified life in a old age. It is also important to live a life of dignity. That is why it also ensures a dignified life in an old age. Then what are the various pension schemes? So pension schemes again आप इसको जाके अपने गूगल से चेक करना क्योंकि सर्वे में ये सब स्कीम्स मेंशन था, तो दैट्स व्हाई इट अगेन बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर योर प्रीलिम्स पार्ट. तो आप इनको जाके एक बार गूगल में चेक करना अपने से, व्हाट आर दी स्कीम्स और क्या क्या प्रोविजंस है इसके. सो पहला है हमारे पास नेशनल सोशल असिस्टेंस प्रोग्राम. ठीक है, ये एक फ्लैगशिप प्रोग्राम है. इसके अंदर बहुत सारे सब स्कीम्स चलते हैं, जैसे हमारे देखो नेशनल ओल्ड एज पेंशन स्कीम, इंदिरा गांधी नेशनल विंडो पेंशन स्कीम, इंदिरा गांधी नेशनल डिसेबिलिटी पेंशन स्कीम्स. सो दीज आर द स्कीम्स, insurance schemes which is basically for the poor underprivileged people, and the total beneficiary of all these schemes collectively is 4.7 crore. देन आपको पता है 2007 में हमारे पास नेशनल पेंशन सिस्टम आया, एनपीएस. नाउ व्हाट इज एनपीएस एंड ओपीएस, ये देखो आप क्या होता है ये. सो फर्स्ट इज द ओल्ड पेंशन सिस्टम, जो आपको पता है पहले कि गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज के लिए होता था. इट वाज द ओल्ड पेंशन सिस्टम. सो ओल्ड पेंशन सिस्टम में क्या होता था कि यू विल गेट अ फिक्स्ड पेंशन, you will get a fixed pension of 50% of your last drawn salary, of your last drawn salary. So suppose you are earning 1 lakh before retirement. तो retirement के पहले आप just 1 लाख earn कर रहे थे, तो आपको retirement के बाद कितना मिलेगा? You will be getting 50,000. That is fixed. That is fixed. You will be getting 50% of what you were drawing just before the retirement, and also you will be getting a lump sum amount. ठीक है, lump sum amount. ठीक है, तो 50,000 आपको पर महीने मिलेगा if you are earning 1 lakh, and also you will be getting a fixed amount at the age of retirement. And the contribution to this pension amount was entirely borne by the गवर्नमेंट. ठीक है, मतलब जो पेंशन का खर्च होगा, बिकॉज एट द एंड you are getting 50% of your last on salary, and also you are getting a fixed amount at the time of retirement. So who is going to pay for that thing? You are not going to pay anything. The entire corpus, the entire fund which is required has to be paid by the government. So this was the basic problem. This is why the government has to spend huge amount of money on the pension, and because of that the government is not able to have the resources to spend on capital infrastructure, right? So that is why the scheme has now been changed. So two things is important. Pehla, it is fixed, how much you will be getting, 50% of your last known salary. तो ये fixed है, ये इतना आपको मिलेगा ही मिलेगा, there's no if and buts. And the second, the entire cost for this thing was borne by the government. Now what is new pension scheme, which has been brought in 2004. So initially it was only for the government employees, but in 2009 it has been extended to all people within 80 to 60 years of age. सारे लोग के लिए, whether they belong to unorganized sector also, it does not matter. But now any people can get herself or himself registered under the new pension scheme in 2000, which has been brought in 2004. अब इसमें क्या है देखो, यहाँ पे your pension is not fixed. Your pension amount is not fixed. आपका पेंशन अमाउंट फिक्स नहीं है. सपोज दिस इज योर एनपीएस अकाउंट. एंड इसमें आपको कुछ पैसे कंट्रीब्यूट करने पड़ेंगे. इस एनपीएस अकाउंट में आपको कुछ पैसे कंट्रीब्यूट करने पड़ेंगे. पहले क्या था, आपको कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट नहीं करना था, बिकॉज सारा खर्च कौन कर रहा है, गवर्नमेंट. बट यहां पे you have to also contribute to your pension corpus. So you have to pay 10% of your salary. जो भी सैलरी आपका, you're earning 1 lakh, you're earning 2 lakh, you're earning 1 crore. मतलब जो भी आपका सैलरी, out of that 10% you have to contribute to the NPS account, and 14% of that amount will be paid by the government. So जितना आप दोगे उसका 14% गवर्नमेंट भी ऐड करेगी एनपीएस अकाउंट में. सो यहां पे देख रहे हो, बोथ द गवर्नमेंट एंड पब्लिक बोथ हैव टू कंट्रीब्यूट टू देयर पेंशन. सो दैट्स व्हाई अब यहां पे क्या हुआ, गवर्नमेंट का खर्च काफी कम हो गया. ठीक है, सो दैट इज वन मेजर इंप्रूवमेंट कि नाउ द गवर्नमेंट्स, पहले क्या था, एंटायर अमाउंट वाज बीइंग बोर्न बाय द गवर्नमेंट. नाउ द गवर्नमेंट इज आल्सो पेइंग, एंड आल्सो that person who will get the pension, that person has to also pay some amount of money into its NPS corpus. Now this NPS account में suppose you have deposited 20 lakhs. आपका टोटल अमाउंट 10 साल 20 साल जितना भी काम किया हो आपने 20 लाख एक्यूमुलेटेड हो गया है। तो ये जो 20 लाख है दिस इज बीइंग इन्वेस्टेड, दिस इज बीइंग इन्वेस्टेड बाय पीएफआरडीए, ये एक रेगुलेटरी एजेंसी है, इसका फुल फॉर्म है आपका पेंशन फंड रेगुलेटरी, पेंशन फंड रेगुलेटरी एंड डेवलपमेंटल अथॉरिटी। सो अब क्या होगा, दिस पर्टिकुलर रेगुलेटरी बॉडी हैज अपॉइंटेड सम appointed some investment professionals, and these investment professionals have to invest this 20 lakh into different kind of market, share market, bond market, any other market. तो ये जो 20 लाख है आपका टोटल एक्यूमुलेटेड अमाउंट, ये आपका डिफरेंट मार्केट में इन्वेस्ट होगा। एंड नाउ एट द टाइम ऑफ रिटायरमेंट, दिस 20 लाख जो आपका पूरा इसके थ्रू आया था, दिस 20 लाख माइट बिकम 40 लाख because of the right investment, and these are the very smart sophisticated investment professionals. तो इनका यही काम है। तो ये आपके 20 लाख को बढ़ा के कितना कर देंगे, 40 लाख। उस 40 लाख में से आपको you will be getting, you have to purchase an annuity कि उस बार मान लो at the time of your retirement ये 20 लाख convert हो जाता है because of investment, it doubles and now your total corpus is 40 लाख। अब इस 40 लाख में से आपको कुछ लमसम अमाउंट लेना पड़ेगा। फॉर एग्जांपल यू टुक 20 लाख ऑफ लमसम अमाउंट एंड बाकी 20 लाख का यू हैव परचेज एन्युटी। एन्युटी का मतलब कि एवरी मंथ यू विल बी गेटिंग सम अमाउंट ऑफ मनी। सो 20 लाख का डिफरेंट कंपनीज होते हैं, वो उस तरीके से एन्युटी आपको सेल करते हैं। सो यू कैन बाय दैट एन्युटी फ्रॉम एनी कंपनी विच हैज बीन एम्पैनल्ड बाय द गवर्नमेंट। आप उनसे एक एन्युटी खरीद सकते हो जिसके अंदर आपको एवरी मंथ एक फिक्स सैलरी मिलेगा, फिक्स पेंशन मिलेगा। ठीक है, एवरी मंथ यू विल बी गेटिंग सम फिक्स पेंशन, यू हैव टू परचेज दैट एन्युटी। तो ये है एनपीएस। सो एनपीएस में दो इंपॉर्टेंट चेंजेस है। पहला कि यहां पे द एंटायर कॉस्ट इज नॉट बॉर्न बाय गवर्नमेंट, सो दैट इज व्हाई इट इज फिजिकली बेनिफिशियल, इट इज फिजिकल साउंड। सेकेंड, द पेंशन अमाउंट इज नॉट फिक्स्ड, it is not 50% of your last drawn salary. It depends upon how much you have invested in this corpus, what is the return, because these money are being invested। और ये हो सकता है 20 लाख कल को 50 लाख हो जाए या 20 लाख 30 लाख हो जाए, कम तो होगा नहीं। It will be 20 lakhs might convert to 60 lakh, who knows? That depends upon how effectively you are investing that money. So that is why the return which you will be getting is also not fixed. So two changes. First, yahan pe the government is not only contributing, government as well as the person, they both are contributing. And second, the return which was in OPS fixed at 50% of your last drawn salary, in this it is not fixed, right? It is depending upon the market, right? So this is the thing which they have talked about is, right? So ये आप देख लेना, the same thing is written over here। यहाँ पे OPS और NPS के बीच में I've given the comparison, so whatever we have discussed, it is written over here। Similarly, Atal Pension Yojana has also been brought by the government, and this is basically for the underprivileged people, how they can be brought under the social security net, how they can be brought under this pension sector. So that's why this scheme has been brought. Again, you have to go to the Google and check out which ministry and other things is responsible for that. And overall, the pension sector is bound to grow because more and more people are getting awareness about the pension sector, and hence their awareness is also increased, and the income is also going to increase. So more and more people will be contributing to this thing. So that is how the survey concludes by giving a broad overview about the pension sector. So this is the fourth chapter we have completed in the most comprehensive manner, so that you are able to answer every question from your prelims as well as from mains perspective, right? So you have to understand what is standing deposit facility, you have to understand what is insurance penetration, insurance premium, what is capital adequacy ratio, because until unless your concepts are not clear, then you will not be able to answer any question in your exam. So again, revise this thing, watch the lecture again if you have any problem, and if you have any doubt, you can put your question in the comment box so that I can address it whenever I see those comments, right? So I hope you enjoy the lecture. Again, we will come with the chapter number 5, in the coming days. So stay tuned to the channel. If you like this video, please like our channel and subscribe to it. Thank you.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.